Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this session. I'm Chris Burt, Corporate Governance Officer for IDB Invest, and I have the privilege of being joined by Brent McFee, the CEO of TTMB, Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Bank. We're going to have an excellent discussion today about a little bit of the changes in Trinidad over the last couple of years and about the corporate restructuring of TTMB, building on our deep dive training we had on Monday on governance in state-owned enterprises that TTMB has ultimately the shareholder of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Brent, thank you very much for joining me. Maybe you could start a little bit by giving us a little bit of the context of TTMB today in Trinidad and in the changes over the last couple of years, both at a corporate level and in the country.
Sure. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for the opportunity to share our story. So Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Bank is really a merger between Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance Company Limited, a company that existed for about 60 years, primarily to deal with first-time homeowners, dealing with more affordable housing, and then the merger, Home Mortgage Bank, primarily would have been established to solve a liquidity problem. At that time, the company operated in the secondary mortgage market, purchasing mortgages by pools from primary lenders and packaging them into mortgage-backed securities and selling them off to investors, etc. So the company, the merger of the both organizations was to solve two issues. One would have been competing. They resulted in, given that the liquidity problem would have been solved, you found that HMB would have been entered the residential mortgage market, and TTMB both were competing in the same space. And then TTMB themselves would have been facing liquidity issues, and the diversification of funding sources would have been one of the reasons why the shareholders felt it wise that we come together and operate it. Yeah.
Excellent, and I should mention that TTMB is a client of IDB Invest, and actually we've been having operations with TTMF before since 2017,
yes.
Also with HMB, so we had a long working together.
Yes.
So last year there was an election in Trinidad and there was a change of the board of directors of TTMB and HMB. Can you talk a little bit about, from the perspective of the management and best corporate governance practices, how do you maintain continuity and alignment of the shareholder interests whilst you go through these quite abrupt changes?
Yes, certainly. So just stepping back to speak about the agency relationship, because understanding that management have a responsibility, depending on where the company is, on the size of the company, you have different stakeholders that we are required to ensure that we protect, right? So as a company, as TTMB, we have two primary shareholders, competing mandates, I must say. The National Insurance Board wants returns on their investment to grow the fund, and then the government wants affordable housing. And so it means that you're not necessarily maximizing profit. And then you have investors who, whether it's via bond or direct investments, you have to protect. And then, of course, the employees and shareholders. So there are legislation that you have that will govern parts of it. Mm-hmm. And where the legislation is not clear, of course, it's not, everything is not prescribed. You then ensure that you have necessary policies that guide the management team, that is approved by the board, that ensures that we have strong governance practices to protect the interests of all stakeholders. So you have, of course, we had the change in board of directors that resulted in, well, we ensured that the first meeting, that they were aware of all the policies that govern the board charters, the strategic plan, just ensuring that the key legislation that affected the organization, that they were aware of, the anti-money laundering, and other key legislation. We did the orientation to ensure that, and that would have been done with the corporate secretary. And further to that, well, we continue to do the training to develop the board.
I think those are excellent points to say, okay, so if we have these two kind of, as you said, competing mandates from different state-owned entities or government entities above you, you have the mandate, you're aligning interests, but you have these other stakeholders to take into consideration. So you mentioned about the board, and you had a complete change of the board, correct? So
Yes.
there was no continuity at all, which is a challenge for any organization to have a complete new board come in. So I guess you've mentioned a little bit about induction training. We've been working together with TTMB on best governance practices about board evaluation, board matrices, to help a new board come in and understand their composition matrix. Talk a little bit more about that process, but also what you've been doing outside of the internal governance and setting expectations to the shareholder of, we have a good commitment to corporate governance, and this is what we expect from our new board members, whoever they are, right?
Yes, yes. So there are a couple of things that, well, first of all, let me mention that one of the benefits of engaging IDB is the advisory services or the advisory aspects that would have assisted us, guided us as to what should be the best practice, understanding that we needed to implement assessments of the board that we codified or we included in our charters, good practices, ensuring that there are competencies, again, all along the lines of protecting the interests of the different stakeholders. So that process in terms of ensuring that the shareholders, that the board would have been, that the charters, etc., would have been aligned. We continue to do, so what we have done is tackle it in both ways, because there are a couple aspects that are within our control and others that are not within our control. The appointment of the directors, while it is that we want competencies to be one of the main aspects, the competencies is not the only aspect that the political will of persons they take into consideration, right? There are other aspects that they take into consideration. So we've taken the part of least resistance, working with the main shareholder, that's NIB, to ensure that the requirements that we were looking for in the charter, because the selection is included in their nomination process, right? In addition to that, we were, I want to say that we probably would have influenced the directors that came, because we do have a good experience, a good mix of experienced directors, young directors, female directors. So it's a very good, diverse board that has been appointed. What we expanded it to do is that we ensured that we included training, specific training, in areas that we feel that we want to develop. It's a good group of professionals, so that we have a good opportunity to develop them. We've aligned ourselves with the corporate governance code of the Caribbean, of Trinidad and Tobago, to ensure that we maintain that level of engagement and development. And then we also ensured that the different legislation, as I would have mentioned, that they have training that ensures that they understand what they are doing and how it impacts, what the requirements of the legislation and how it impacts the key stakeholders.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Brent. I think those answers show a little bit of how the different elements we've been talking about this week come together. From governance is always an evolution, has to be maintained and reinforced with training at company level, but also at a country level. You have corporate governance codes, you have shareholder interest, that if we can move together towards best practices, it's for the benefit of everybody else.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Brent, for participating, and I wish you the best for the rest of the event today and this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.